Hello. Ah, you can hear me. Good, 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 good. Oh, hi, Debbie. Who was that? You have a friend with you? Nice. Oh, oh, excellent. A music appreciator, I can tell.
Right.
Good, good, good. Well, hi. I see some familiar faces here who are used to only seeing my house at night, but here we are in the daytime, helping out with the Sing Plus schedule. And Tori was considering an interesting topic, which I felt I knew enough about to keep the topic the same. So today's topic is as posted, the Lotti Crucifixus, and talking about music in Lent. Yeah, if you want to say hello to other people in the chat, that's a nice way to do that in these larger groups. Bigger group than I often have late at night. So where are you tuning in from? And just give a little hello. I'll tell you mine while that's happening. And I'm keeping an eye on the waiting room, trying to let people in. My name is Graham Beer, and I'm tuning in from just north of the city of Philadelphia in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the United States of America. It is feeling like springtime here. We've had some colder weather in recent weeks, right after all the flowers bloomed from some warmer weather. So we lost some of the magnolias to frost about a week ago here, but not all of them. Depends on where they were, colder pocket, warmer pocket, that sort of thing. But it's a lovely sunny day, getting up to 60 Fahrenheit. That's what we Americans talk in Fahrenheit um, today. So getting nice and warm. Could even go for short sleeves outside in the afternoon. Not sure I will. Yeah, and thanks for joining in. Yeah, it is for those who celebrate. It is Holy Week. It is Easter week between Palm Sunday and Easter, and I'm sure if you are someone who's been singing for some time, whether or not you're a Christian, I'm sure you're aware of the music connected to Christianity and celebrations, because so much great music has been written for not just the Christian church, but certainly a lot of our Western art music, given that Christianity is central to European history, and European history as exported to the rest of the world. I'm sure you've come across some of these traditions, but we're going to talk in a little bit more detail about what that might sound like in music, what makes it different, and what's going on with this music. Yeah, sorry, just still keeping an eye on the waiting room. If something happens to your connection, you get booted to the waiting room, I promise I'll keep checking and let you back in. I haven't yet learned how to turn it off when it comes to that point, but I think I have to go into the settings somewhere else. I'm not going to mess with that now. Let me just check in with folks, because anyone watching this on playback, if you want to get the social side of things, you may or may not be able to see the chat, I don't think, in general. So we've got people tuning in, someone popping in, but leaving partway because there's going to be a Maundy Thursday service tonight. Yeah, we've got, my church is doing two different ones. We have one with guitar for a more informal service feel with some foot washing, and we've also got a Holy Supper service, one for communion, that's a little more formal with the organ and cello. That should be lovely. Northamptonshire, England, Guelph, Ontario. Welcome, Emily. And British Columbia. Hello, Lillooet. Lillooet. Sarah, how do you say the name of where you're tuning in from? If you don't mind unmuting and saying hello.
It's hello everybody. In English it's Lillooet, but it's from a Stadtliam word Lilwat.
From a what word?
Stadtliam word, that's the indigenous nation that's inhabited this territory for 10,000 years.
Wow.
So it's Lilwat, and then it got anglicized to Lillooet.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
And we've got Germany and California and Wantage in Oxfordshire, Barrie, Ontario, Milton Keynes. It's nice to have more folks from Europe tuning in, since I don't see you as often unless you're feeling like an insomniac. From Wales and Newcastle, people tuning in from all over the place. What a great... Ooh, Susie Lapwood's asking, did anyone see the Aurora Borealis last night in the UK? Was it visible where you were, Susie? Oh, fantastic. Nice. Nice. Actually, I got to see it a couple of months ago because it was visible down here in Philadelphia, that really big one that sort of made the international news. Go ahead and say hello, Susie.
Yeah, hi everybody. Yes, it was visible for about 15 minutes, I gather, from quite a lot of the UK. I saw lots of lovely photos, didn't actually see it myself.
Uh-huh. Well, I saw a big fuss on Facebook after my choir rehearsal a couple of months ago when it was visible all the way down here. I climbed up the cathedral tower and was able to see it even with the naked eye, though I also got a few photos. So, how interesting. I don't think it's been visible here for a long time, this far south. Wolverhampton, Kent, well done tuning in from all over the place. Thanks for joining in. If you want to keep track of each other in the chat or ask me any questions, I'll try to keep half an eye on it. It's easy to lose track of that along the way.
Hi, Graham.
Hi.
It's
Hi,
Jane
Jane.
from, Jane from Connecticut, and I have
And I
Leanne
am
with
from
me.
England in Connecticut.
She's
Is that
living.
Leanne?
Yes, I'm in
I
Connecticut.
recognize you. Yeah.
I've been in North Carolina and now I'm in Connecticut with Jane.
Yeah.
And you're
So
tuning in together. What fun.
Two for the price of one.
You know, stay at homies, or whatever we call ourselves. You can run into us all over the world. You know, I'm so glad you've connected in real life.
This is wonderful. Thank you, Graham.
yeah.
Thanks for jumping in to say so. That just lifts my day to know that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we'll enjoy the session.
Yes. Well, so this is a Sing Plus session. I haven't done too many of those myself, but I'm going to get going. I don't think I'm going to start with a warm up or a stretch or anything, because we're more talking about the music, and that's not as common in these sessions, except when they're talking specifically about vocal technique, I'm sure. But here we go. And if you have any questions or comments along the way in the chat, I will stop that from popping up and blocking people's phones. But I can still see what you're up to, and I'll try to pass things on or answer your questions and keep track of it. So, yeah, Lent. Let's see, Lenten music. I was going to start there and then get into the Crucifixus in a few minutes. Let me spotlight myself, if I can remember how to do that. There it is. Hi! I'm growing a mustache. For those of you that know me, I feel like I should address that, since I don't normally have one. I'm playing a character in about 2 weeks. In a reenactment. It's a historic tour of a cemetery in Reading, Pennsylvania, where I direct a choir. And it goes around to where different famous people from Reading's history are buried, and you hear a little bit about them, and some of them are reenacted. And I am playing the role of Levi Mengel, who founded the Public Museum in Reading, and he had a mustache, and I figured that would be a way to look a little less like Graham Beer for anyone in the audience who knows who I am. So I'm having fun and going for it. I'm committed. But that's irrelevant to today's session, except that those of you who know me may be disturbed. Right. And a little more of my context here. I know about the music of the Lenten period a couple of different ways. I've worked for a bunch of different churches and denominations throughout my life. Right now, I work for the new church, known as the Swedenborgians, here in Bryn Athyn, just north of Philadelphia. And we don't actually do a lot with Lent as the broader period. We actually sort of just Thursday and Friday of Holy Week focus on these things in that particular season. The topic can come up at any point. So for my work right now as a church musician, I don't do much, but that also means that I'm free for Easter Vigil on Saturday because my church doesn't do that. So I'll sometimes sing for other folks, or our Good Friday services in the evening. So I've been singing for a neighbor of mine for a noon Good Friday service over at an Episcopal church not too far away to help him out. So I try to stay fresh on that sort of thing. And also, as a music historian, I'm just fascinated by the history of all music, and particularly my focus within sacred music and early music. Of course, there's a lot to talk about here, so we'll have a little bit of a tour. I'm not going to go too in depth, but here you go. Just in case anyone's not familiar with tradition, or in case, like me, working for the Swedenborgians and growing up in that tradition, I wasn't aware of Lent until I was talking to friends who observe it, or until I was working as a church musician in the Catholic Church or the Episcopal Church, or different churches that acknowledge it in different ways. Lent is a season within Christian religion. As you can already tell from what I'm saying, it's observed in different ways in different denominations within Christianity, but it's a season of penitence. And by season, it's about 40 days, depending on who you ask. It's meant to echo the 40 days that Jesus spent fasting in the wilderness before he began his public ministry. And a lot of what happened there during the fasting in the wilderness, he was tempted by Satan, and he was resisting that temptation to do things differently than is supposed to have happened in the Christian tradition. And so this is the Christian church echoing that in our annual celebrations. You know, there are seasons in our lives, seasons throughout the year. The seasons of the church with Christmas moved to the winter, where we celebrate the turning around of darkness into light. And there are different celebrations. Easter, of course, is sort of that springtime. A lot of it does connect back in terms of where it is on the calendar, connects to celebrations that might be connected to more pagan worships that were being adopted as Christianity was spreading throughout Europe and throughout parts of the world. They would often tie in with local customs, and it lines up very nicely if you go through these moods along with the seasons. For instance, Christmas being in late December, the idea that that's at the darker point of the year and things are turning around and beginning to lighten at that point. And Easter is great in terms of rebirth. The number of sermons I've listened to around Easter time about the bulb of the daffodil underground during the winter in hibernation and then blooming again, and how our lives go through these seasons as well, as do our spiritual reflections. So there you are. Lent is echoing a particular period in the Gospels where Jesus was fasting in the wilderness for 40 days and resisting temptation. And that's what Christians are trying to do when they observe Lent as well. It runs from Ash Wednesday to either Thursday this week, Maundy Thursday, or Saturday Vigil right before Easter, the midnight before Easter, depending on what tradition you follow. You can count it differently because Sundays are sometimes, in a lot of traditions, are excluded from Lent, so they don't count among those 40 days, the Sundays that fall during Lent season. And sometimes Lent is even sort of put on pause in terms of the tradition on those Sundays, and you're allowed to do things that are that you're abstaining from during Lent, that you're avoiding. Lent is often, for many people, about giving something up. A famous example is abstaining from meat on Fridays. So a lot of Catholic churches will do fish fries as fundraisers or things. I've known fire companies that'll do it in areas where there are a lot of people that observe Lent, because fish is apparently a meat you can eat on Fridays even when you're abstaining from meat. All sorts of interesting cultural details and rules, some of them make more sense than others depending on where you're looking at them from, have come up around this throughout history. Within churches, there's a lot of austerity. A lot of less celebration, less bells and whistles, less beautiful and gaudy things. In some of these older churches, you can see a lot of beautiful artwork, gems on the cross up on the altar, and gold and that sort of thing. These images are traditionally veiled. You would put a sackcloth or a sheet tied down over top of them to make things a little more barren. Some of the decorations are taken away. Musically, this is what ties into it a lot. No alleluias. So sometimes if you're singing a song that has an alleluia in it during Lent, there will be different text that you can use at that point, or you just avoid those songs that have them entirely. Also, no Gloria, which is part of the regular Mass that's done in a lot of churches on Sunday mornings, but weekly in some bigger churches or monastic churches. Yeah, I'm just going to check in with the chat because I'm getting some other insights from folks as well, and I want to share those as they come along. Oh, thanks for the mustache comment. Yes, I think it looks all right. Yeah. So Susie's saying that you're singing Albright's Chichester Mass, Ireland Greater Love, Duraflate Ubi Caritas, Bairstow Lamentations. Yeah, if your church is, or your choir is doing anything related to Lent music, I would welcome you to drop that in the chat, because it's interesting to think of the different music. Lamentations are one that I wasn't going to talk specifically about today, but since it came up in the chat, I'll just mention the Lamentations of Jeremiah set to music are often used this time of year, because they're talking about more penitential things. They're talking about suffering and pain, which is part of the season. Jan is saying modern Catholics call it the 40 days time. That's interesting. No flowers, says Debbie. Yes, that's absolutely right. Less decoration. Yes, yes. Yeah, so musically, no Alleluia, no Gloria. No Gloria in excelsis Deo. Nope. Save that for later. No use of instruments in a lot of churches. Some churches have made an exemption for that. The Catholic Church officially has an exemption for that if the instruments are being used to support singing, but no instruments on their own. So no organ, prelude, or postlude. It's silent when you come into the church, which helps with that feel of austerity, of barrenness. Some churches are exclusively a cappella. No organs or instruments even to support the singing. And this really, artistically, this really sets up a contrast at Easter when suddenly you hire a brass quintet, you have the organ back, and you're singing Alleluia and the bells are ringing again. I mean, the sound of Easter really changes, as well as the visuals when you unveil those statues and put out flowers again and everything like that. So, hopefully that sort of helps you get a sense of what the artistic context is that this music is being written for. That was my goal in this very talky introduction session. I'm going to play some music for you in a moment. Someone's chiming in saying nonconformist here had no idea about avoiding Alleluia. I will tell you, I get in trouble all the time as a musician for that, who does different things. Since my tradition and the tradition I work for doesn't have those sensitivities or those traditions, I am less aware of it. So even though I've sung in Catholic churches through Lent period and we've avoided Alleluias, did I know we were consciously that we were avoiding Alleluia specifically? Do I remember that each year? And I lead a Catholic school outreach program for Catholic school children with my secular Red and Choral Society each year. And it often falls in March and it often falls during Lent. And early on when I got that job, I picked a song that had an Alleluia of it, and I didn't think twice. And we had to change the words last minute because someone heard and warned me that that wasn't going to be accepted within that performance. So that was very strict. And I also remember conducting a choral evensong for BBC in York Minster, where we had picked a couple of pieces to go on that evensong. And I think the anthem might have had an Alleluia in it, and we had to make the adjustment. We saw it coming. I actually wrote to the composer to ask, we would like to do this piece. Can we change the words of this one little spot? And she was open to the idea, so we did it. But there you go. Things to keep track of. Yeah, Jade, just to let you know, I have made that the case because the chat sometimes, depending on what device people are watching on, it can cause trouble and be distracting if there's a lot of chit-chat going on. So I have made it just that I can see them at the moment, and that's why I'm trying to read them out. That way you can hear what each other are saying. I'll open it up later on again as well, but thanks. That's something that we sometimes do. Music for Lent. A couple of examples I wanted to share with you. I've talked about austerity, so that's a flavor, but within austerity, you're not writing a lot of music that you're particularly excited about if the point is to not be excited. The point is to be more bland or less flowery or celebratory. So some churches return to plain chant, even churches that don't do much chant, which is monody. It means you're doing music with just the melody and no harmony with it. Some churches will do more chant during Lent to kind of emphasize that flavor. A lot of plain chant. Susie's saying you do a plain chant compline weekly in Lent. I know a lot of churches that do that sort of thing. So that's one thing that you can do with the music. We're not going to talk about that in detail today, but just mentioning getting rid of harmony and just doing plain chant is one flavor. During Easter week itself is where the music starts to expand again. Even though we're still in Lent in a lot of churches during this week, music that was written for the Tenebrae services, the services of Thursday, Friday, and Saturday before Easter, before you've unveiled the statues and put flowers back on the altar. There are a lot of music that's been written for there. Some of it adheres to different rules. It depends on your tradition. You may be familiar with the Passions. These are big choral works that get done by even secular choral societies. We'll do them because they're huge and fun to sing. The St. John Passion, the St. Matthew Passion by Bach are probably the two big famous ones. And that is the story of Christ's suffering and death and resurrection, which is being studied at this time of year and preached on in the churches and meditated on. So that's music that's written, but that has a lot of instruments. So within the Lutheran tradition, there wasn't as much of a concern about avoiding instruments in some of the churches, certainly. And during some of the history, these things evolve. You can't make any huge statements there. The Good Friday service that I often do at this neighboring church, in the Episcopal Church, it's a plain chant Passion. We sing just chant, but we sing straight through the text of the Passion in English, actually, so that it's able to be understood by the congregation. So it's a bit of a mixed tradition there. Yeah. Various music has been written for the Tenebrae. One of the most famous pieces, and I'm going to share you just a little bit of it now, because that's not what this session's about, but you may have heard it. But if you're not familiar with the Allegri Miserere, prepare to hear it. This is a setting of Psalm 51, which is one of the penitential psalms. So it's about, have mercy on me, wash me clean of my sins, I repent. That's a loose translation of the text. And let me get my screen sharing going here. Where do these buttons go when I make a smaller screen? There it is. Slightly too small to have it on the main menu. Yes. I'm going to start with the Miserere because it's so famous. Let me move this over, actually, because that'll get rid of the gray boxes for you. There we go. Yes, so this Miserere was written for the Sistine Chapel, and actually it's got a great history of its own. That's not what this session's about, so very briefly, it was sort of a top secret. You could only hear it in the Sistine Chapel during Tenebrae. And so famous people from all over Europe, including musicians like Mendelssohn and Mozart, critics like Charles Burney, they would go specifically to hear this, and that was the only way to hear it, was to go there. It was sort of kept a secret, the papal state secret. And it's just beautiful setting for 5-voice choir and chant, and then 4-voice choir with really high notes that developed over its history. And then it would alternate through the verses between those different things. And so I'll just give you a little taste of that here. This is, in fact, a group whose name is fantastic for this. Tenebrae, the English choir Tenebrae, conducted by Nigel Short. This is their performance of it. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but just a little taste of what that music sounds like. Notice how sparse it is, but and how much dissonance and penitence there is in it. There's sort of a bit of that sense of suffering and wishing to be forgiven. I'll pause it there. You've basically heard all of the music. There's a little ending with all 9 parts singing together at the same time on the final verse, but the music is pretty much the same. It alternates verses between the chant, the 5-voice lower choir, and the 4-voice higher choir with the famous high C that gets sung 5 times because of the number of verses. So you have to have either multiple sopranos or sopranos who don't mind doing that several times over. But something to listen out for in the music is those dissonances. Those crunches that move away. And we'll see that when we get to the Crucifixus, that'll become very relevant, and I'll talk about it in more detail with the music on screen. But that's a flavor of that to listen out for. You heard the chant, you heard the a cappella, so no instruments allowed. There you are. Let's have another example of something from Tenebrae, another famous set of music for Tenebrae, also similarly Renaissance, is the Tenebrae Responsories by Thomas Luis de Victoria. He was a Spanish composer. You can certainly think of him in line with the Italian composers because a lot of the music we have from him was written while he visited Rome early in his career to study music. But it's beautiful. It's similar to Palestrina, but there is a slightly Spanish flavor. I wanted to do my PhD on that and didn't have enough material to run with at the beginning. But here, his Tenebrae Responsories are short little pieces for 4 voices, a cappella, and they set these lamentation texts. And some of them can be put together for each of the evening or morning. Originally it was matins, tenebrae services, these sort of dark services where the music is pretty sublime, I would say, but also not as flashy as it would normally be. So here is a little bit of his most famous of the many responses. They last over an hour if you sing them all back to back, but they're all little pieces. And O vos omnes, O my people, is one of the most famous sets of those texts. There are actually a lot of composers that have just done that text as an excerpt to react to it. But here I will share again. The share button's back. Yay. And over to Victoria. Here, I thought I'd put the music on the screen for some of these so you can see what's going. But here's the O vos omnes. And before I play it, just as a little aside, if you're interested, these early music editions sometimes have prefatory staves. Do you see where I'm waving my mouse around on the left there? Before the modern interpretation of the music, it shows you what the original looked like. So it shows you that, yes, it had a G clef and a G clef for the 2 soprano parts. They've kept those treble clefs like we're used to today. Shows you where the flat was, shows you that it was in cut time, and shows you the first note and what value it was. This editor has made the values a little shorter because we're used to seeing more eighth notes and quarter notes than they used to use back then. One of the arguments is they were saving ink by having all the hollow notes, so more whole notes and half notes and fewer eighth notes. So they would use a lot of double half notes, or what this is called is a breve, that square note. So actually, normally in the original music, these eighth notes right here in the alto, the first eighth notes, would have been quarter notes. Everything would have been up a level in terms of, but we're not used to reading that as easily, so a lot of editors change that. These prefatory staves are a way to show you what the original was in case you were curious. And note that the alto and tenor both use C clefs, so the alto middle C is the second line up. You could tell because the B flat ended up there on the bottom space, which we think of as F in the treble clef. And likewise, the tenor is on a C3, or C, middle C is the middle line. If you're a viola player, you're very familiar with that. But luckily for us, it's been translated into these treble clefs, with the treble clef for the tenor being down the octave. Anyway, that's what you're seeing, and here's a little taste of the O vos omnes from Victoria's Tenebrae Responsories. Oh, you can even see here down at the bottom, an hour and 11 minutes and 50 seconds is the length of this video, and that's all of them together. But I didn't give you a translation before I played it for you, which I meant to, but O vos omnes is taken from Lamentations 1:12, and it means, "O you who walk by on the road, pay attention and see if there be any sorrow like my sorrow. That's the text. And again, you know, Renaissance music has dissonances to help it drive along, but in this music, you might find a few more of them than you would averagely find in a piece. More like you would find in a piece about weeping or lamenting, because that's what this music is about. Yeah, so if you're interested in following up, that's Victoria's Tenebrae Responsories. And again, it's a much more popular piece, so I think most of you probably have heard it. But if you were new to the Miserere by Allegri, Allegri, that's well worth catching at some point. I mean to stop the share, and I'll just check back in to see what the conversation is looking like. People sharing that they've heard the complete Tenebrae. It is quite an experience to hear them all. Yes, Debbie, you're right. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday Vigil are called the Triduum, the 3 pre-Easter services, where we have maybe slightly more involved music than we've had earlier in Lent. It's finally building up towards Easter. Oh, album 1, we recorded the Allegri Miserere. Suzanne, you're totally right. Anyone who was on the album 1 project, we've sung that. I lose track. We've done so many projects at this point. It's pretty amazing that we're up to, what is it, our 40th, 50th project? I've forgotten the number there as well. I'm busy. It's Holy Week. My brain has no space. Yeah, it's people sharing some experiences of that. Someone saying went to Ash Wednesday at York Minster and heard the choir singing Miserere. It's such a powerful, powerful experience. Yeah. Oh, and sharing some music. I can't click in and see that just now, but yeah. So those are just a few examples of Lenten music from, and again, a lot of early music gets done in Lent because it tends to be more a cappella, fewer instruments than, say, Haydn and Mozart were using, and especially during the Romantic period as they were writing for the church. And that suits that simplicity, that looking backwards, that suits very well. Yeah. All right. Let's get into the Crucifixus a little bit. That's what you came for, probably. But since the title was Music of Lent, I thought I'd better contextualize it seriously. Crucifixus. Let's before we do any info on that, I'm just going to play the piece with the score on the screen. So here you go. Always takes me a second. All right. Yeah. Enjoy. Oh boy, that is heavy. There's so much emotion in that piece. I want to tell you, while I've still got my screen shared, I'll pop, because I'm going to pop a few pictures up. I want to tell you a little bit about the piece. But actually, no, I'm going to stop the share because I would like to remove Spotlight, since I've got y'all muted and stuff, and tell me who has sung this before. Give a long wave so I can see. Anyone sung this? Sarah has sung this. Rosalinda's sung this. I'll hop onto my other screen here. Yeah, Christine has sung this. Okay, so not too many. It's a tough one because it's in so many parts. It's actually musically not terribly hard to learn, but as a choir director, you have to be brave because you need 8 parts instead of 4 parts where you've got enough confident singers. So it spreads you thinner, and so it doesn't get done maybe as often as it could. But I would say if you have enough bodies, it's a simple enough piece musically that you can learn it. It's not as complex as a lot of 8-voice pieces, to be honest. There's a lot of repeated material, but all of those dissonances, it's just dissonance after dissonance, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I want to tell you a little bit about the context of how it was written. So Antonio Lotti, he was born in 1667, and he died in 1740 in his 70s. He was, for context of when he was, that's Baroque period. He was 18 years old when Johann Sebastian Bach and Georg Friedrich Handel were born in 1685. So Lotti was already 18 years old. So he's of their generation of sorts, but he's a little earlier than both of them. And they're known as the big composers of the High Baroque, along with Scarlatti. So that's the context that he's living and working in. Late Baroque period, the High Baroque. He was born in Venice, and his whole career was at San Marco, the Basilica of St. Mark's in Venice. He did take a break for 2 years and went to the court at Dresden in Germany, and worked there in his early 50s. He worked there for a couple of years. He wrote a lot of church music. He wrote some secular music. He wrote a book of madrigals, and he wrote 30 operas, many of which were very popular, especially in Venice, which was a big opera city. So that's a little bit about Lotti himself, just for context. And let me show you a little bit of this, of where he worked in St. Mark's, because I don't know if you've seen pictures or heard about it. It's one of the famous buildings in music history, because a lot of music was written there that influenced other composers, and famous composers worked there for a long time, like Monteverdi, the Gabriellis, they worked there. Marc Antonio Ingegneri, who's a name that most of you probably don't know, but a lot of famous musicians worked at St. Mark's. So we're in Venice, which is sort of a city of canals. It's built on posts in a lagoon. And this big thing is somehow held up on those cedar posts and doesn't sink into the lagoon, or maybe it is sinking. I know during high tide, sometimes you can see reflections. There's beautiful photos of this courtyard having an inch of water in it, which probably is not good for the buildings of the city, but you can see the reflection of. And that tall brick tower there on the right is the bell tower, which is also a very famous landmark. It just goes up. Here's another photo to give you more of a sense. See those domes? We're going to look down from above. That's St. Mark's. Here's the plaza from behind, and look at how big that roof, what a floor space that roof area covers. It's huge, absolutely huge. And here's a photo from inside. And the reason I'm showing you these photos is not just tourism and interest, but this is an acoustic that Lotti worked in. Big domes. You can see one sort of right over the head of the photographer here. There's another one further down the way. There's another one all the way across. Balconies where you could have musicians across the way. In fact, St. Mark's, this isn't necessarily truly the case. Mythology occurs in music history as well, where you make up something that sounds pretty good and then everyone believes it. But it's certainly known that a lot of progress was made on polychoral music, when you have 2 choirs singing in alternation and then all together, a very powerful experience. Like the Allegri Miserere, having those choirs in different places. The balconies in St. Mark's, we know that a lot of early polychoral work was done there because you could only fit so many musicians in one balcony, so you stick some in the other side. Now what do? There's a delay. Okay, let's have one side sing, then take a break while the other side sings, and then we'll deal with the delay for a few moments when we want real power. So, the building drove some of music history as well, these buildings like this. But if you can imagine that Lottie, a lot of his music was written with this acoustic in mind, because this is where he spent his career. He was there as a boy, probably. As a young man, he was hired as a countertenor, and then as an assistant organist, and then music master eventually. So this is worth thinking about when we think about the Crucifixus. This is a space that it might have been written for. Now, the piece itself, the oldest and most accurate version of it that has been found, handwritten of course, is on Venetian paper, but it's in the Saxony State Library in Dresden. So early on, some musicologists said, well, that probably means that he wrote it while he was in Dresden, but it may have been brought to Dresden with him. When exactly it was composed, a little bit uncertain. But either way, he had this acoustic in his head and in his experience and in his working life. So I think that's relevant. It comes from the Credo. The Credo is the middle movement of the Mass. It's the confession of faith, the statement of belief. The middle of it has this line, he was crucified also for us, suffered under Pontius Pilate, and was buried. It's stating the things that Christians believe, the Credo is. Well, the Credo is very specifically Catholic, so Catholic Christianity. It has a lot of detail in there that very much specifies the faith. Credo in unum Deum is how it starts. It takes its name from the first word, I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. And it goes on to sort of list the characteristics or specifics of the biblical understanding of the God. So, et incarnatus est, and was made flesh and dwelt among us, is part. If you sing credos in masses, composers will often treat that differently. The idea of God coming down to earth is very special in theology. Interestingly, this is the part that follows that. And in this credo, Lottie treated this part particularly specially. There had been violins and cellos. There has been an orchestra playing along in the credo so far, and then it just stops. There is a basso continuo part, so it may have been accompanied on the organ, or it may have been done a cappella. But it's just this 8-voice exquisite a cappella feeling older music that he puts on this part, the crucifixion. So this credo or this mass makes more sense for Holy Week. Maybe he was flavoring it that way. You can say the same sentence with emphasis on different syllables. To be or not to be. To be or not to be. And if you listen to different credos, you'll notice the et incarnatus est is often favored, is often treated specially. Lottie just it's nice, but he keeps the instruments in, and then it's the crucifixus, it's the crucifixion that is the center of this particular piece. And that's the power a composer has. That's the power music has. They can be, they can put a different spin or a different interpretation and help us find that on the same text that we sing or read throughout history. So that's fascinating to me. Lottie wrote several credos, all of them containing a crucifixus. There are 2 written for 4 voices, 1 written for 5 voices, 1 written for 6 voices, 1 written for 10 voices, which I actually wasn't aware of and found out when I was researching for this very presentation. Found a Tallis Scholars performance. It's very beautiful and interesting. I won't take your time through that. We have other things to talk about today. But in listening through it, I noticed some similarities to some of his melodies to the 8-voice version. I don't know which came first. And of course, this very famous 8-voice crucifixus. He may have written more that were lost. In this time period, we don't know how much someone wrote. We know that Bach probably wrote over 300 cantatas. We only have over 200 of them that survive. So there you go. That's a bit of the history on it. Let's take a look at the score together, because this piece is full of stuff to talk about. I'll try to keep myself under control. Well, we have 14 minutes. We'll see what we can do. So I spent a little bit of time drawing some lines for you in sort of a reddish-orange color, just to show some dissonances. If I put them all in, you wouldn't be able to see much music, because it would just be a spider web of lines. But I put a few in at the beginning just to help us get used to what's going on here. I know fewer of us are fluent in the bass clef, but if you look at these 2 clefs being the same, you see how the third note of the piece, the bass 2s, land on a G, and they hold that note tied over the bar. You can see where I'm working there? The bass 1s come in the same clef, and they go, that's the top space, they go to the line above that, flattened. So those 2 notes are very close to each other, but they're not the same note. And then you can see, how do the bass 2s react? They've been holding that note, and they hold it until the bass ones, if you look vertically, come in on that crunchy note, very close but not the same note, very dissonant, very grating. The bass ones then are pushed down into harmony with it, and then they land on this note, this F here, the line below. That's a third apart, 2 lines instead of a line and a space next to each other. That's more consonant. I'll play it for you in a moment. And then they hold that note, and the bass ones actually come down to cause trouble again. And then the bass twos, who have been holding it until the trouble begins to be caused, also react by going down, downward, like tears falling down a face or hanging your head in grief. These are some of the ideas we're dealing with here. I'll play it for you. I'm going to really hit that G because I have a piano instead of an organ, so it doesn't sustain, it dies away. And by the time the bass ones get to the A flat, I want you to still be able to hear that G. So I'm going to, weird musicality, but I'm going to really whack that G and then play the bass one part softly. Just warning you. Hopefully it sounds all right. You can let me know in a second. Here we go. Those are the 2 bass parts. I'll try it again by restriking. That's another way. If I got rid of the tie and just play the G again, that's another way to hear it. I just don't know how it's coming across on your speakers over the internet. So here we go, one more time with a restrike. So you can hear these dissonances, and they're done by suspension. So the part holds the note from the previous chord, and the new part recontextualizes it by saying, no, that note was from the last chord. It doesn't match this one. It's dissonant. And then you move to resolve it. And the movement tends to be downward in music theory, and that works really well for a piece about grief and weeping. And that just keeps happening all the way up. You can see the tenors. Ooh, if I sing against the piano, I can sustain it. Was that effective? Did that sort of work? Balance is all right. Hey, I should have thought of that before I was designing the session. The altos come in and, of course, do the same thing. Alto 2. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Notice for variety's sake, the little fixos, the 8th notes that have been happening in some of the parts, he doesn't always do it everywhere. Because he's doing so much of this, it gives you something different. And it grates even more if you don't do that ornament on the way down. Listen to that alto part. And then as more voices are in, there are more parts to crunch against, and you can see all of this all over the place. Let's listen to that opening with the recording and just let my lines, I didn't get all the dissonances in here, but let my little lines show you which note was started, and then that note should crescendo. So when you're singing this music, here's an insight for you as a singer in a choir. When you're singing this music, dissonances work well if you lean into them. I sometimes refer to that as twisting the knife, like really doubling down on the pain of the dissonance, on its momentum that it creates, this sort of magnetism where you have to resolve it, and then relax into the resolution. So if I was a bass 2, I would sing I would crescendo on the held notes, because when you see a tie over the bar, you know there could be a suspension, and you want to lean into that. So listen for the singers doing that. They'll naturally be doing that. I'm going to leave this shared. It'll be gray for just a moment, and then it will be back. Here is a different recording. This is Tenebrae recording. Oh, we heard the Cambridge Singers, John Rutter's group, doing the previous recording with the music notation. We'll come back to that at the final. But here is Tenebrae singing the opening for you, so you can look at those orange lines with me and hear voices doing it. So that's just a slow build. And if you look at it on the page, I mean, you can just, even on that recording where the screen, you can just see it going up. The grief is mounting, it's swelling, like the swelling of tears that Dowland would tell you all about. Yeah, into the next section we have different music. We have, let me just grab it up here. We have... So now we have a new theme, which I heard in the 10-voice version too. That stuck out to me. And notice when a part sings more than 4 of the same note, eighth notes in a row, that means it's like the tides, like the suspension. So the alto one here is singing Crucifixus etiam. The bass moved up to an A flat, Crucifixus etiam, and the tenor moved up. Crucifixus etiam. And then they resolve. So the same thing is happening throughout this section as well. And going on to another section, Sub Pontio Pilato, Passus et sepultus es. Whenever you see ties over the bar, you know something's going on. So here, the alto 2 and the soprano 2 are playing off half notes with each other, and the soprano 2 goes like this, and the altos come to an E flat against them. So they're doing suspensions. It's a chain of suspensions on the way down, and you can just see them passing all through the choir. More and more of these moments where they're just descending, again like tears, against each other. The bass and the bass one and the soprano one here on this page, and so forth. I want to listen to those sections a little bit, and then we'll play through the piece again at the end, just being hyper aware of all these dissonances, won't we? Here is letter B, right where I stopped. Here is Tenebrae again. That's another section. And that's another section right there that we just got through. And so again, when you're looking at this music, when you see a tied note over the bar, that looking here at the alto 2 second measure where they come in on a G, and in that chord, let me make sure I've got the chord right. Yeah, in that chord, which is a C minor chord, that's a great note in that chord. But then it switches to F minor on the next measure, and the alto 2s, they're still stuck on their G for another moment before they join the team. So then you end up with this. That's where it grates. So visually, slurs are over the top there. You see them as just showing you that you're doing one syllable. But underneath, when it ties the note together, that's probably a suspension anytime you see that. So even if you're not that fluent in music literacy, that sort of thing, when you see these ties, like this bass 2 tied over the system down to that B flat, you know there's probably a suspension happening. You can see it here in the bass one, the quarter note tied over. It's off the beat. Something's going on. So as we go through it, be looking out for that. What I would like to do now to wrap up the session, having talked about Lent and dissonance and a cappella music, is to go through it one more time. Those of you that learn from learning tracks, it may be a bit of an ask to sing along, but I welcome you to if you want to sing along with this. The music will be up on the screen. It's not terribly big because there are so many parts. It'll be that recording we used the first time through. And it doesn't matter what part you sing along with, but if you're not singing along, would you look out for those ties? Would you look out for those dissonances and just hear how the music just builds and builds them, and a lot of downward motion as well. That's something that's really characteristic of this piece, is constant falling lines and falling harmonies. And here you go. Hope it's effective for you in one way or another. To wait until the little thing disappears so I can see my screen. There it is. Lotti Crucifixus, right around there. And the first note is going to be Crucifix. I think this is in the right key. I didn't even check. Here we go. Here's a listens through / sing through, as you like. There you are, a little introduction to the Lottie Crucifixus. I'm checking back in. There's a comment I want to share. Someone was saying it sounds a bit later. Margaret, I'm going to give you credit. Margaret Cox said it sounds a bit later to me, a bit Mozartish. Absolutely. Lottie is actually known, sort of within those who study music history from this period, as forward-looking. Some of his work really does seem to be transitional from Baroque into the classical period, whereas Bach is more doubling down on the high Baroque. So you're right. I do not have a photo of Lottie. Someone was asking if I have a photo of Lottie. It's controversial whether there are any surviving portraits of him. You can look online and for portraits of Lottie, and you can probably even find the discussion of whether or not they are him. There are two that might be him, but they have his name in pencil, which didn't exist back when he was alive, on the back or something, and yeah, so we don't know. There's definitely one famous portrait that people thought was Lottie that's definitely somebody else. We know at this point. Yeah. Fabulous piece. We've come to a little beyond the hour, so if you have to pop off, you're welcome to. But I have a sequitur. I'm not going to say a non sequitur because I very much thought of it, but it's not part of the Lenten music tradition. I don't know if you're familiar with Henry Purcell's Hear My Prayer, O Lord. It's a fragment. He never completed it. But it's in 8 voices, and it has a lot of similar music. He doesn't build it up in the same way, but I just wanted to spend a brief moment tacking that on to the end of the session, once I knew we'd gotten done what we came to do, because if you don't know this piece, it's a really cool piece in English from the English tradition that has a similar feel. Have a listen. Sorry to cut it off there, but I'm over time, and I just wanted to make a point or two with this because my discussion of Lenten music and sadness in music and repentance and grief was connected to Lottie's Crucifixus specifically. Purcell does a couple of things here that are different than what Lottie does. He doesn't do multiple sections for one thing. It's just a constant build of the same style of music. He doesn't have the da 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 versus bum bum. Lottie has different feelings within it. Purcell just builds. It's intense, and it's the same material throughout. His movements go up, which is different, but there's chromaticism, as in using the half steps, using the black keys in between the notes. And let my cry. It works its way through. The tenor actually going down here. And let my crying come to thee. Yeah, so that's something that also you'll find in tenebrae music, especially in the 1900s. You'll find a lot more chromaticism used for grief as well, using a lot of half steps in between melodically as well. So that's something I just wanted to mention since it felt like I left it out otherwise, because it's not really in the Lottie. He uses other techniques. But thank you very much for coming to this session. It's been a pleasure to work with you. And I hope that you have a wonderful season, however you observe, and a wonderful springtime if you're in the northern hemisphere. I guess in the southern hemisphere, it's coming on towards autumn, isn't it? But we all have our own lives to live and our own experiences of them. I enjoyed overlapping with you for this hour. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Easter,
Graham.
everyone. Happy Easter.
Bye.
Happy Easter.
Thank
Bye.
you. Graham.
Hallelujah.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello.
All right. All right.
Bye, everyone.
Can I ask a question, Graham?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yes, it's completely not to do with this, but are you coming to our gala in September?
No, I can't.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm so sad. I really wanted to, but I had a pre-existing commitment that I really can't get out of. So,
we'll miss you.
and if I was coming, it was going to be a surprise, but I can't. I will
Well,
miss
it's
it as
another
well.
one
I'm
just for
so
you.
excited it's happening. It would have been a great excuse to visit back as well. It's been ages since I've been over. Yes. Are you going, I take it?
Oh, yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I wish you all the best of it. Maybe I'll tune in on Zoom. That would be appropriate, right?